Welcome to Living in Connection, where we explore the nature of physical and non-physical reality and what that means in your life.
Well, hello and welcome again. I'm Dirk. This is Frank DeMarco, a dear friend of mine. Last time we were talking about the challenges in life and resignation versus surrender and acceptance and all the challenges and perhaps ways to deal with those. I think the part we didn't really get into is the positive aspects. That it really is amazing as I've gone through life how many things I have gained from the challenges I had to face. And I think we might want to talk about that. What do you think?
All right, with me, I would start by saying probably our attitude to what happens to us is as much the product, as much the producer of good results and of productive side effects. It's really easy to just become a not a scapegoat, but to feel like you are the universe's scapegoat. And one problem with that, there are many problems. One problem with that is it doesn't lead you to do anything. It doesn't encourage you to say, okay, now what do I do with this? But the other way of going about it, which you have done, which I have done, not always, but many times, is to say, okay, where's the gift in this situation? What does this leave open? Now, having said that, I have to admit, as I look back on my life, overwhelmingly, when I had a serious problem, I didn't do that because I wasn't self-aware enough. If I had any kind of self-awareness, if I had any perspective of myself as a character in the situation rather than the inside of the universe, things might have been very much different for everybody, and certainly much more much smoother and much more helpful. But you can't just get that if you're born with that. That's a gift of the gods. Mostly I think you have to learn it. And if the process of learning it isn't too bad, maybe that's not a bad way to do. Maybe that's worth the admission price. But it sure can be expensive when you don't. If you're in a situation and you feel like you are the butt of the joke, and you'd had nothing to do with you, it was done to you. That's just, I can't think of anything more debilitating than that.
But, it's funny. You remind me of something. I tell a story, and I won't tell the story, but just the end of it is many times in my life, I've come in the morning and said, good morning, in a very chipper way, because that's who I am. And I've heard the answer back, what the hell's so good about it? And it's like, ooh, I'm sorry. But what the other thought that strikes me is, we have a dear friend of ours who did pass on, who he constantly lamented that his guys were out to get him. And I'm wondering if John might like to join us in this and talk about what the gains are that we've had and that he had. Perhaps not. We'll see.
I'm waiting to see. John, are you there? It's funny, I'm getting a sort of a sense of him, but not.
That's what I'm getting as well.
There's his sardonic presence, but I don't have any words or even thoughts yet. Let's keep going. It's I get the sense I'm going to put my oar in when I want to. I don't know if that's true. Sure. Here's how I experienced John as a very intelligent, very insightful, very psychologically experienced person who was not naive to any of this, but felt that his own experience justified him in thinking that his non 3D component, as he says or used to say, underinvested in him. He felt that they did not give him the resources that he needed, and that with all of his sincere intent and his willpower directed to wanting these things, he was still held back in some way. That's sort of your experience, John, right?
Well, and also an incredibly kind gentleman.
Well, that's it. Kind. He was, I guess it's not a problem to say that he was a psychiatrist. I'm sure he was a hell of a psychiatrist.
I am too.
And, yeah. And by the way, the fact that John was a psychiatrist and had problems shouldn't really surprise people. I mean, you would think, in fact, Rita used to tell me that there's nobody in the world more screwed up than psychologists.
They're the ones most in need of psychiatry. Yes,
that may be why they were drawn into the profession. Well, she was talking about psychologists, but I suppose psychiatrists would be the same.
I lump them together. So yeah.
Well, psychiatrists are doctors and they can prescribe, and apparently that's the major difference.
Right.
So being lumped together is not bad. Wait a minute. Where were we starting on this? What were we?
The benefits that came out of, like my arthritis or people going through cancers. I'll tell a piece of another story of a dear friend who, when we first met him, had advanced B-cell lymphoma. And it was all involved in energy work and other things and helping him to resolve that, which, as the year played out, it was a truly magnificent year. And by the end of it, he was our teacher. That was unquestionably clear. Lots of things were resolved in his life and in his family and beyond. But one of the things that we learned was that in his case, his path was not a path of life. And at a year on, he passed away of a lung infection and had not a tumor in his body, even though when we met him, he was diagnosed with 3 weeks to live. He had tumors everywhere. But the point of it all was that in doing that journey and going through that journey, it was a journey to love. It was a journey to life in all kinds of ways. But the path didn't necessarily mean that means a long life. It meant a fabulously better life.
Mm-hmm.
The gifts in that were remarkable for everyone involved, for all of his family, for his wife, for all of us. And yet there were lessons, too, that went in completely different directions than any we would have ever thought when we started.
I wouldn't be surprised if there were lessons that contradicted each other, because we have so many strands, different people get different parts of it. I think of John F. Kennedy and his son both. People said it's an Irish tradition, I guess. They said the gods gave him every gift except length of life. And I thought, well, maybe not length of life was one of the gifts.
Yeah.
But that's not here nor there, I guess.
But anyway, for me, in going through all of this, we talked about last time that there were gifts involved. A part of it was the strategy that I developed that's partly because of obsessive compulsive disorder that I directed that into learning and whatnot. But there were other things where it led me to find joy in trying to chase down and understand all kinds of aspects of life, particularly the technical ones, but also non-technical ones of all sorts. And in doing that, to learn what was really known and what isn't known, and to find new answers where none existed.
All right, I'll take all of that, but there's another aspect of it that occurs to me. A lot of what we may be doing is holding conscious 3D space while things are being resolved within us that are actually from other times, and
exactly
the strands that are part of us. And we wouldn't necessarily know what was going on. To us, it might seem like blank time, or seem like just total frustration. I was thinking, you remember the other day we were talking about the feeling of I've come to the point in my life where I can't do what I used to be able to do. And such a situation always lets you think, I'm peaked out, or B, there has been some tragedy that I'm the victim of, or C, there could be an opportunity here,
Yes.
And I was thinking last night, in fact, the odd thing is, Dirk, it takes so long for things to sink in. And then when they've sunk in and you really have absorbed them, then you forget them and they have to sink in again.
Exactly.
Way back 25 years ago when I was talking with Rita when I was doing this initially, they said to her, what Frank does when he reads, and he's just going to find out about this as we say it. I mean, they said it in just that way. And they pointed out that when I would be reading like mystery novels or any kind of novels or history, biography, all of those things, when I would be watching movies on Netflix and that kind of thing, to me, it was like I was goofing off and enjoying it, but goofing off. I mean, because I can enjoy a biography at least as much as a novel, depending on. But the point of it is, they were saying, while my surface mind was doing that, other things were being processed in the background that were part of my life, and it was processing. And occasionally, I could overhear it. Occasionally, I could sort of overhear something going over something in my life. Go, well, this wouldn't. But for some reason, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but it appears to be that for some reason that can happen without my conscious participation. And actually, apparently, sometimes it can happen easier without my conscious participation, which I think you might think of as interference, actually.
I've experienced just that.
But if that's true, all these people who are dealing with whatever crippling manifestations they're dealing with may actually be accomplishing a hell of a lot more than they ever would suspect. It could be that they are holding space while something's resolved along their threads. It could be they're holding space while something's resolved in their own particular 3D past. It could be that they're holding space for other people, for all we know.
Well, and you look at our examples, particularly my example, because of my own interests in the mind and the brain and whatnot, but then even more so because of the things that happened with the arthritis, I ended up guided to go find the Monroe Institute. Now, the Monroe Institute is one path of many ways you can do this sort of thing, and it just happens for me that it was the most valuable.
It just so happens. Yeah, I love that, Dirk.
Yeah, it just so happens. But what it ended up doing was it allowed me to find ways, to find relief within my body. Gee, if you go into a deep, relaxed, meditative state, that cannot possibly help your arthritis, can it?
Nothing practical about that. No.
Yeah, there's no pill in there. That can't work. Well, that was the beginning of it, but then accidentally, my ass.
That one too. Yeah, right.
There's all these other things that would come up. And so I did not know. My sister died when she was 26 of primary Addison's disease and Hashimoto's thyroiditis. It's a disease no one dies of. She did. And it was a tragedy that tore my family apart. And when I went to Monroe, I did not know. I literally did not know for the first several years and perhaps the first 5 programs that a major part of the reason I was there was trying to find her. And when I had finally allowed enough space that the loss of her was set aside a bit, that is when, through my cousin, who had also then recently died, I found her in Paris. And it was absolutely transformative. It was one of those ineffable times in life. Mm-hmm. But the journey of going from the arthritis to there's no line that you can draw that connects those points, but there was a line there. There was a direct connection.
I'll bet there is a line, but it's certainly not a 3D one.
Right. Anyway, my point of it is, for anybody who's going through things like this, that there may be other things in the world that are places for you to focus on that will allow you to find this sort of thing for yourself. Now, for some, it may have nothing to do with metaphysical aspects. It might be that they end up, to distract their mind, becoming a gardener, become an absolute exquisite rose gardener or a breeder of peonies, or who knows.
Well, some of them might find it within religion. They might get an actual spiritual experience that would heal them. That's certainly not exactly unknown. But there's a nuance here that I don't quite like, that we're both putting in there, that it's a sort of a savior event, which is
Oh,
a
yeah, yeah.
funny way to, you know, that isn't the
That's not what
point.
this is about. No.
No, and I know it isn't, but I can hear how it could come across that way.
Right.
You and I wound up in the only place that we know of that was really fitted for our personalities. There aren't
Hmm.
a whole lot of institutions that would be so much um, personal experience oriented and so little you have to accept this, and then of course the the community that forms of people having the common language and common experiences is unbelievable. Well, I don't know about you. For me, it was life transforming because I had never had a community.
It's amazing. It truly, truly amazing. And every group is amazing.
Now, supposing you're someone who's dealing with something really serious, dealing with it all your life, and you don't have any access to that, or that's not your path. Maybe you don't have the money. Maybe you don't, that doesn't mean you're cut off. Nothing can cut you off from your higher self, from
Right.
your non 3D component. God, it sounds so cliched, but that's how things become cliched because they're true.
Well, and it's the thing that I think we each of us discovered, and Monroe helped us get there, of knowing to the very bottom of ourselves we are never alone, and
You know
knowing
my,
that we are always loved.
my war story on that one. That was really the turning point for me.
Hmm.
In a way, I could almost say it was a turning point for my entire life, and I was 46 years old. So it's true. If you count, we're never alone. If you count, there are no accidents. If you count, the universe loves you. If you count, the universe needs you. If you count that the universe has no spare parts and has no junk, if you can really believe that to the point where you come to know it, it transforms everything. It really does, because there's no room for victimhood. There's certainly no room for becoming an oppressor. I mean, it's the stupidest thing in the world. There's no
Yep.
room for thinking that life is unsafe. I believe that Seth said he came to show people that the world was safe, that reality was safe. If so, that's a wonderful, tremendous gift, if people can accept it.
I think the hard part for folks is when they're living fully within the 3D, disconnected as much as they can be. That's hard to see because a lot of the events in the world would argue exactly the opposite. And yet, when you can see them in the larger context of all that is, there is so much more.
Well, the trouble is, as you see it that way, you're seeing it more accurately, I believe, but
Mhm.
it looks more and more fairy tale-ish to people who are still stuck in the older one.
Yes.
When Rita and I were talking in 2000, 2001, and the guy said, all is well. No, this was the night of September 11th, 2001. And Rita was asking about it, and they said, all is well, all is always well. And ultimately, we realized that what they meant is the universe knows what it's doing. The free will universe is operating the way it's supposed to. That doesn't mean all is the best of all possible worlds. It doesn't mean even that we approve of it, but it means the universe knows what it's doing. And
Yep.
and boy, when you don't have to spend all your time helping the sun come up in the morning, you save a lot of energy.
It's nice when you have those days that are filled with kittens and puppies, but that's not every day.
Well, it's funny you say that, because the guys would say, well, you don't like sharks and you don't like hyenas, but if there weren't killers, the world would be overrun with live bodies. And if there
Mhm.
weren't what do you call them, scavengers, the world would be awash with dead bodies. You don't have to like them for them to be necessary.
Yeah, the recyclers are just as important as everybody else.
Hmm.
Yep.
Hmm. It's funny, Dirk. Well, you and I have our problems, but I think we've always had a fortunate life. We're a little more unique now in realizing how fortunate, and it's so much so that it's hard to be sure that we're not coming across as, what did you call them, puppies and unicorns, or whatever it is. It's hard to be sure that we're not coming across as being immune, or blind rather, to suffering, and to think that suffering doesn't exist, or doesn't mean anything, or it isn't important. My God, think of the psychic residue caused by suffering, and by injustice and by all of the things that you see around us every day. It's not like they don't exist, and it's not like they don't have consequences. But if you see all of that in the context of a chaotic universe that doesn't mean anything, that's a whole different animal than if you see it as this is a whole free will universe that is working. I mean, it's just.
Well, and the best exemplars of that I've seen in my life is one of my heroes when I was younger was Nelson Mandela, but also there were others along that line, and they exemplified something where they didn't hide from the suffering. They saw the suffering clearly, and they lived in a way that helped to ameliorate it and remove it rather than exacerbating it. Sister Teresa was another one of my heroes in the same way, that she very much lived within it.
I would put up the Dalai Lama.
The Dalai Lama as well. You also get others, though. It's like Pope Francis, I was incredibly impressed by. Pope Leo, even more so now. And I'm not a religious person, but these are incredible people.
Mm-hmm.
You also have incredible young folks that have stepped out into the world, that have led by example in amazing ways. And none of them are blind to what's happening. They're not putting on rose-colored glasses and thinking all is sunshine and rabbits. It's the world is full of tragedy, and they embrace it.
I know it was Carl Jung who made a distinction between recognizing what's going on and condemning it. And he said, condemning never liberates, condemning oppresses, understanding liberates. And I think that's what you're saying. They all very much understood condemnation. They all understood suffering, but they also understood those were dead-end paths.
Right.
The Dalai Lama was asked one time if he had spiritual challenges, and they were surprised when he said anger. Well, you can imagine all the news reports that he's had over the past 70 years. Yeah, there might be room for a little anger there, but it's not the same thing as becoming anger and becoming hatred. It's
giving into it. Yes.
Yeah. Because all you're doing is adding to it in that case.
Well, the pile of that is quite large enough. Thank you. We don't need more.
You think we've got our quota filled? All right. Well,
it would be good if we could close that shop. They should stop distributing that. So what else have we missed here that we should highlight?
Well, I'm just thinking, we've sort of slid sideways from physical suffering to what you might call mental suffering because of the conditions of the world around us. And that's probably just as well to mention that, as because that is suffering. It is real suffering. There's nothing you can do about it. And blunting your sensibilities to it is not a great answer. Pretending it doesn't exist. Well, pretending is never a good answer.
Mm-hmm.
So what you wind up doing there as well is, how can I? Oh wait, this is coming. Whenever it's so funny, I'll start off by saying something really definite. I have no idea what I'm going to say, and that's when I realized that the company. And I think I've just lost what it was they were going to say. That's such a funny experience. So, all right, what did I just say? I was talking about physical and mental suffering.
And not ignoring it, not pretending it's not real.
I've got to stop all that.
No, actually, I'm glad that happened, because it points out one of the ironies of doing this is there are emotional components and other components that happen when you connect with guidance or connect with the guys, or however you want to refer to it, that it's important to know that those exist and to see them happen, because it is a fun thing. It's interesting.
I believe in this business, a sense of humor is a very, very big advantage.
Yeah.
Some of the things that happen are so ridiculous.
Well, one of the aspects that maybe this will trigger something for you. One of the aspects that I've seen lately is we're at a time when a lot of horrible things are happening all over the world, particularly here. And it's in many ways parallel to like the arthritis I went through or people going through cancers and whatnot. It's a condition that your ability to do anything is almost non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, except observe. And the problem is observing is itself painful. And then the trick is to figure out, how can I be witness and not be hurt in being the witness? And then find some small way to make things better that perhaps serves as an example to others to then find their own small ways to become a landslide of ways.
All right, we would say this. It can be a mistake to confuse the screen with the reality that's being shown. What happens in 3D is actually a lot less important than what happens among all of you in your non-3D component, because you are there, you are suffering from watching injustice or tragedy or whatever. Mm-hmm. That suffering is real. The other is difficult to say this in a way that'll make sense to you, but the farther it gets from the individual, the less real it is. So the more societal, okay, two people are in a car wreck. Mm-hmm. They're both injured. It's real to them. They're in the center of that. You read about or you watch that. It's not as real to you. Your emotions watching it are real, but theirs is not real. It's not as real. Let's put it that way. All right. So make an analogy a little larger to the entire world, and you can say, I, Dirk, watching the news, am outraged by this. I'm saddened by this. I'm really angry about this. I'm just depressed about this. All of those things are real to you. Mm-hmm. The things themselves, though, are less real. They're more like catalysts than actual. Now, this is going to sound strange. They're not as real as they seem. They're real because they're involving more people. They're real to the person that's in it. They're not as real to the person that's observing it. Most of what you are experiencing in life, you're observing, not seeing, not being. Okay. Therefore, it inverts the usual thing. And instead of saying, now, how can I make the world a better place, which people do? There's nothing wrong with that impulse. But if they want to be effective, how do I make myself a better place?
Exactly.
That works. The other may work, may not work, but it's still going to be derivative. Now, that makes sense to you. I don't think it'll make sense.
It does. Well, I'll take it in the way of an example. Let's see if this works. Imagine you've got a restaurant, a bar, some situation where people are together, and somehow some irritant has happened, and a couple of folks have gotten into a dispute, and one of them finally feels like they've had enough and just rears back and wallops somebody else. For me, I will see things in the world happening where I see this suite of events occurring, and the chain of probabilities of where it may go is all right there. And it's like, if it goes down that group of lines, this is the kind of outcome it has, and it's not going to be good.
And it's so unnecessary.
And it's so unnecessary. And if it went down a different set of lines, this is the results. And it's partly a recognizing that, of going and recognizing oneself to cut off that temptation in the beginning and to follow the better paths, because of how not just they affect you, but how they affect everyone.
Now, you better say some more about that, because I don't think that's going to be clear. What do you mean by cutting off the lines? I think I know, but I'm not sure.
Well, like in the case of the example I was giving of, if you cut off the idea that physical violence is going to be a part of the answer, and instead you go another way.
Yes, but how do you cut it off is what I'm asking.
That's an internal thing of recognizing this is not love. This is not helpful. This will not resolve anything. It will only make things worse. What can I do that will actually be beneficial of helping to resolve this?
Now, where you are right now is the key to many things, but it is not obvious.
No, it's not.
how to do that, or what it is you're doing, or how you're doing it, or how you came to it. Perhaps that should be the subject of another broadcast.
I think so.
Because if you think it can be explained,
I think we can try. I don't know that we can succeed, but then that's always the case.
that's all we can do is try. I think let's do that next time.
All right. Well, another very interesting discussion.
You know, Dirk, I'm getting a little disturbed. We never have anything to talk about.
I know, it's so boring.
So, how's your golf game?
Yeah, that's a good walk spoiled.
All right, next time.
All right, next time. Take care.
If you enjoyed this episode, please press like. Please press subscribe to stay informed of new episodes as they appear. We would love to hear from you in the comments section below, and we wish you the very best in connecting with your own guidance.